Next up, we're going to talk about Kanban. So Kanban is my favorite tool in the world, and at its heart, Kanban is one of these. It is a bunch of columns that represent to do, doing, and done. To do are the tasks that I've not yet started. Doing are the things that I'm currently doing, and done means that I have delivered it in whatever shape that may take. So this is a really simple idea of Kanban, but as you start to get into it, you can see that it has a lot of flexibility to it. So Kanban is a scheduling system designed for just-in-time manufacturing by Toyota. And the concept of it was a pull-based system where they were trying to rid themselves of as much waste as possible. And the way they tooled their system was every time a car rolled off and went off to, was actually sold and rolled out of a dealership, that sent the signal back through the process to say that we are now ready for the next thing to move through. So that the concept of just in time, the process of building a new car is started because the old car has actually gone out the door. In its simplest form, it's a board, either physical or electronic. You can draw one on a whiteboard. There's plenty of online services that offer Kanban, and it has a structured set of columns. And every one of those columns is going to have a set of rules that apply to it. Later phases pick up the work from earlier phases, so things should never travel backwards in a Kanban board. You should never, and this is one of the more controversial things that people, Confluence, if anyone has used, sorry, not Confluence, Jira, the big Atlassian workflow management tool, it allows tasks to travel back, you might find an issue in testing and you will send that feature back to development again and sort of start the process off again. One of the concepts in Kanban is a piece of work will never travel backward, because if a piece of work can travel backward, you can end up in a constant cycle where nothing actually ever gets done. By making sure that things never move backwards, you're actually focusing your attention on what was the closest thing to completion in your whole process. There is no concept of going backwards. If there's a thing that's stranded upstream, you need to swarm that, fix the problems that are there, and get it released. And as I mentioned, the most simplistic representation is to do, doing, and done. The heart of Kanban as used by Alliance, and I found a really hard time finding images for this one, so you have a leopard. How we use Kanban. We use Kanban to improve visibility. A Kanban is, every one of our projects runs off a Kanban board, and that means you can go to a page, and on that page is represented a set of columns that will generally have something like specs and estimate to start, design, development, internal testing, external testing, and send live. So it tells you at a glance what the process is that a feature is going to go through in order to get to live. Not only that, but on the board, you're going to see a series of cards. You saw the option of like the post-it notes, each one of those representing a feature. And that tells you where in the process every individual feature is and how close something is to being completed. Generally speaking, there will also either be a person's name written on it, or in the electronic version, there might be a little avatar on there that tells you who the person is that's working on it. And finally, there are three phases three statuses a card can be in. It can be worked on right now, or and our favorite tool puts giant green and red outlines around it, it can be blocked. And blocked says, there is a problem with this card that I cannot address, I need help. It calls out to everyone in the team and says, there is a problem with this card that means it cannot advance, please help me. And finally, there's ready, nice big green border, and that says, I have satisfied all of the requirements of the phase I'm currently in. So what it does is it tells you at a glance, and I can look across all of my projects in about 15 minutes of a morning. It tells you where everything is and where you need to spend your attention with most value. Helps us define the rules of the development cycle. Every one of our phases on a Kanban board will have a little checklist that tells you, by the time a card's marked ready here, what has been done. So when it comes to development, for a developer to mark a card ready in development, they have to have done the coding, they have to have demonstrated to another person in the office that the code works on their local machine, and they must have packaged the code up into what's called a merge request. It kind of says, here is my bit of code, please look at it, and put a link to that in the card on the board. So by something being ready, all of a sudden, or being marked as ready on the board, all of a sudden I know that those things have occurred. And if it hasn't, then we've got someone not following the process, and it tells you something else. You need to go and approach that person and kind of make sure, hey, get into line. It keeps us asking the question of why. Why is something taking so long? Why is it taking us so long to get something out? Electronic Kanban boards have fantastic stats tracking, or a lot of them do, that tell you how long things are spending in different phases. You can actually say, say with some accuracy, that we're spending 30% of our time in the testing phase, and think, why is that the case? Is that a reasonable amount of time? You might find out that it is, but it keeps you asking, why are we spending as much time as we are on different phases? Why are cards spending longer here than they should? For instance, my favourite one, why is this person telling me that they're working on 2 different cards at once? A person cannot do 2 tasks at the same time. So why have they decided to pick up task B when they haven't finished task A? By visualising things, it makes that question of why a lot clearer. It denotes and promotes ownership. It tells you when someone is working on something, and it also tells you who you should speak to about a thing. If there is a card on the board that has someone's face assigned, you can make the assumption that you can go up and tap that person on the shoulder and ask for a status update about that card. And it's actually a really, really powerful thing. People understand that by having their name on that card, that they are the custodian of it. They actually need to know and understand that they are responsible for taking it to the next part of the process. And it encourages conversation and communication. So every card is a contract for a conversation. It is not trying to say that that card should contain every bit of information and that you never have to chat with someone. It's just telling you who it is you should chat with and what it is you're chatting about. It's kind of giving you that shared context. Why would you use them? Well, you would use one because it gives you a concrete process that you can then start to improve. If you work without a documented process, then generally speaking, you will get to a point where everyone's roughly on the same page. But by actually concretely documenting your process, one, you flush out a whole lot of things that you hadn't thought of as missing in your process, but it also gives you a draft that you can start to iterate on. They improve the visibility of all ongoing work. Effectively, we've gotten to the point where work doesn't occur without it being represented on the board in some way, shape or form. So if someone's not assigned to any cards, they're not working on the system at the time. And it improves accountability. Obviously, you've got your face on something, you've kind of said, I'm owning this. You don't want to have to answer the hard question of where you dropped the ball. So it encourages people to take ownership.